Thank you, Jonathan, for getting us kicked off tonight. We're going to tell a story that'll lead into the rest of our praise time tonight from our trip to Antigua this past week. And raise your hand if you were on that trip. All right. I'm counting on all of y'all to help me fill in the gaps. I'm going to tell the story of Wednesday into Thursday. We told this story to the rest of the shepherds last night and the staff in the staff meeting, and it's probably been the thing that I keep thinking about on this trip because it seems like a dream. Every time I've gone on any kind of mission trip, there's always trouble. There's always setbacks. You always have adversity, and you have to keep the faith and know that God's still in control. But this year we had an elevated form of spiritual warfare that personally I had not experienced anything like it in my life, and that's why I look back on it. It doesn't even feel like it was real going into Wednesday and Thursday. We had about 267 children that came to the Vacation Bible School and soccer camp. And you'll probably hear in a few minutes stories from the youngest of toddlers. There was a class of about 30 that were between 2 and 4 years old, and they were wild. Let me tell you what. It was like herding cats. That's exactly right. All the way up to 19 years old. Of course, when you're telling 260 children the gospel, and you tell it to them on Monday, tell it to them 3 or 4 times on Monday. You tell it to them 3 or 4 times on Tuesday as they go through and rotate through a soccer drill to a tent that's got a Vacation Bible School station, and just it's kind of like a football practice where after 15 minutes the horn blows and everybody moves to the next station. After the second day, some of those children, some of those teenagers especially, were beginning to think about making decisions for Jesus Christ. And on Wednesday, one of them that was working, I think it was Kent, you were working with him. Why don't you tell us about this fellow and what happened on Wednesday?
Well, we noticed a young man that had, a lot of the kids were rowdy or weren't paying attention, but he seemed to be paying more attention. And so there's so many people we study the Bible with, it's hard to remember them all. So help me out if I get it wrong. But we pulled him aside and started studying the Bible with him. We shared with him about, God has a plan for your life that you can, He has great things in store for you. We shared with him that Jesus called disciples, and He called them to follow Jesus and go make fishers of men. And we shared with him about, what it means to deny yourself, give up your selfishness, and what do you need to give up in following Jesus. And he was saying that he wanted to follow Jesus, and so he's saying he's moving towards that, making that commitment and decision. And then we're sitting in the stands, and it was like Acts 13 all over again to me. If you've read Paul's first missionary journey, the Apostle Paul went to an island. Here we were on an island. And the governor becomes very interested in following Jesus. But there's a sorcerer there by the name of Elymas who starts stirring up trouble. Well, we had these 2 women that came up to him. We don't think he's ready. We're not relatives, but we don't think he's ready. He's not ready to give up his life. And so they talked him out of it for that day. And so that was discouraging to us, but I feel like that was good. It was a good challenge, even though the devil was working hard there to discourage him. And so eventually he was on, he was off, he was on, he was off till the next day. And then I'll turn it back to Randy.
the two ladies he was talking about came back the next day. They were young enough that they got in line and they registered as 19-year-olds and got the little red band to be in the 19-year-old group. And everywhere they went, when the people were teaching, when our folks were teaching, they were just arguing against everything. So somebody called attention to Jeff Thompson, and he and I went over there to those ladies, and we actually removed them from that group. And upon investigation, we found out that they were 27 years old. And they were there, I don't know who brought them there other than Satan, to disrupt the message of the gospel. And so the last day, on Thursday, there were about 12 or 13 of the teenagers there that were really thinking about making a decision to give their life to Christ. And anybody raise your hand if I skip something along here and just add it right in. And those two ladies showed up again, and we take them out of that group, and immediately they go to the stands and sit in the stands next to where another group, another group of our teachers teach as the groups rotate to this part of the stands. They just start talking to the kids. And so Jeff has the smarts about him to go get Gaitha. And for the rest of that morning, Gaitha sat between those two ladies and where the children were sitting. With her stick. Okay? And kept those ladies away from distracting the children. And so every day at the end, we always come together and sing some songs, and we would feed lunch to the children. And the last day, we had a plan to try to get them all escorted out as quickly as possible so that we could focus on the ones that were really ready to receive Christ and be buried with Him in baptism. And we had a plan to line them up to get their sandwich and their drink and to go through the gate. This whole soccer field, by the way, is surrounded by a concrete block wall, and I'm going to back up to Thursday morning. After what had happened on Wednesday, I looked out. When we got there, before the children had got there, some of our people were walking around the building. I went to the far corner and found Kent, and he had been marching around it 7 times. Now, he told me that he wasn't going to blow the trumpet so that the walls would stay up, okay? But as we stood there in the corner, we started praying and we started calling for God. And some of you may think this is strange, but by the time you hear the rest of the story, you won't. We started calling for God to send an encampment of angels to cover that soccer field in a dome. And we were praying for the Superdome of angels to cover that soccer field and protect the children that wanted to hear about Jesus. We prayed that, then we got together with the group, and we prayed that with the group, and the children came, did all the events, and there was more teaching going on, and we got to the time to line them up to send them out. Somebody had donated 250 soccer balls. We took 250 deflated soccer balls with us, and some of the people at the church at Villa had inflated them for us. And we didn't think of what would happen if we left them in the vans all morning in the hot sun. And about 70 of them blew up. And so we didn't have enough to give out to all the children. I mean, we gave out the last ball, and those of you that have done upward soccer, you know what the orange cones are for. We were handing out orange cones. Okay? It was anything we could get our hands on to give them as a prize or a gift. Some of them were pretty upset that they didn't get the soccer ball. Some of them have moved around to different groups and didn't think they were going to get anything. Chuck, you want to tell your story about your fellow that did get his gift? That was Julie Hall. Brian's not in here. Go ahead and tell him.
At the trying to get my time frame here. At the end of the day, when the older kids from 14 and up were getting jerseys and shorts, and they had some duffel bags And as that was kind of finishing up, this guy came in kind of over to our group kind of late and was asking if he could get a jersey. And you had to have rules, and you had to have some discipline over there for sure. But anyway, this guy, he had swapped from our group and went down to a younger group the day or two before to be with friends or whatever. But he was wanting a jersey, and he hadn't got a soccer ball. So anyway, a couple of the guys were talking with him and saying, look, next year you'll know, or whatever, don't change groups. And anyway, Julie finally said, well, we're going to leave it up to Mr. Chuck whether or not, what he wants to do. And of course, I'm already, before then, I was going to go steal it from him, I guess, if I had to get him a jersey and a pair of shorts to go buy it myself. So anyway, I said, well, God's a merciful God. He's been merciful to me. Let's let the guy have a jersey. And he got a duffel bag also. And I had seen the guy 2 or 3 times that week. He's a pretty tall guy, and he just stands out in the crowd. And it turned out his name was George. I had not talked to him all week. But as you want to tell about over at the baptism, or all right.
Part of the reason that was so strong is that Julie Hall was over that group, and the school teacher and her kicked in when somebody came to her group that wasn't supposed to be in her group. She thought they were coming to her group just to get a jersey. She wasn't going to let him get a jersey, and so Julie let Chuck make that call. Well, they all came in, and they were lining up to go out. When it got down to the last ball, we were handing out what we could hand out, and it was one gate, and all of these children were jammed in there trying to get what they could get. Some on the outside, they'd step out the gate and they wouldn't move, and it was just jammed on both sides of the gate. And at that point, we had about 12 that wanted to be baptized. And so several of us went and took those 12 and went and got in vans, and we ended up not having enough van drivers to get everybody to go down to the ocean for the baptisms. And so I got out of my van, and I went and made my way through the crowd and got back inside the field area, and I shouted at Mark that we needed some extra van drivers. And about the time I shouted that, all I heard was somebody screamed, "That boy's got a machete, somebody stop him." One of the boys that was a troublemaker all week had already thrown a brick at one of our people, and evidently didn't like what he got. He'd gone out, and all I heard was that this boy's got a machete, somebody better stop him. And the next thing I saw was Matt Hall taking him down. Now, fortunately, at that moment I thought, man, Matt is impressive if he's taking down a guy with a machete. Found out later it was just a stick, all right? It was so far away, it wasn't a machete. It was just a stick. But and then a bunch of our guys started running out there, and a bunch of them started, and I thought, oh no, we are fixing to have the Cross Point St. John's free-for-all going on here. And who was it that somebody in our group told one of them, this guy's been trying to hit some of our folks with a stick, and then they got him and took him out. So in the middle of all of that, I'm hollering at Mark, I need at least another bus driver, and Mark's saying, I got to have all the men in here to fight the sticks. And so, I mean, it is literally, I think back now, and it was chaos. And Mark was white as a sheet when this was going on, and it was awful. But no. What Gaitha said, she didn't know you were in here. She wouldn't have said that. Okay. Well, in any case, Gina had worked with one of I think he was a 14-year-old that was wanting to be baptized. As soon as he told that to her, in this crowd of people, about 10 of his friends just encircled him. And they all speak English, but when they go at it, they can speak a dialect that is hard, a dialect of it that's hard for us to understand. You could make out words, but they were just shouting him, and you could witness the spirit just deflate in this young man from his excitement about knowing Christ to whatever it was that they were telling him. And I want y'all to know that Gina Killen stepped right in the middle of all of those and says, every one of you, you get away from him right now. You back off. You back off. This is his decision. It is not yours. And they all backed down. They backed away. I'm telling you, greater is the power in us than who is in the world. So Gina takes him outside, and they can't find a spot. They get him in a van, but there's not a spot for her. And so Brian Wooten, he was wanting to go and witness the baptisms. He volunteers to give up his seat so that Gina could go. And so Brian gets out of the vans, goes back through the crowd, and back into the field area. In the vans, we all take off to head down to the beach. When Brian walks in, he looks, and there's a kid standing over by himself. Is that the one? It's the one that Chuck got the jersey for. And he knew the vans had left, and he was wanting to be baptized. Did you hear this? Brian volunteered to get off the van. And he's the one that found this guy, and he found one of the 20-year-olds from the Villa Church that had a car there. And they brought him down to the beach. But Brian would have never run into him if he hadn't volunteered to give up his seat. God's working in all of this. I mean, it's almost an out-of-body experience for those of us that are in the middle of it happening at that point. So we get down to the beach, and I mean, it was awesome to see. Everybody know who Jeremy Vo is? One of our teenagers here. It's awesome to see Jeremy Vo baptize two guys that he had talked to. It was wonderful to see, to be able to baptize one of the young ladies with Nina, my daughter, helping me baptize one of the young ladies. So we go through, and we have 13 baptisms. One of our own, Ann Ross Simpson, was baptized, and then out of the crowd walks into the water the guy from the day before who had been shouted down. And I don't know how this story could be told. I wish it could be made into a movie, because it would be unbelievable.
To picture that you're inside of a concrete wall around this soccer field, and they have got the lines, the lane going outside of this in order to try to prevent any problem areas. With police tape taped off. I don't know if it was police tape or not. That's what it looked like. I couldn't read it. But it was yellow, and it was taped off so that once they went outside, and when all this started with Gina out there, before that started, it was just like it's just like people from the community were coming up. Those kids were coming up to try to start trouble. And it looked like a gang out there. So it was a scary looking situation, because y'all were trying to get all those kids to move on out, and they were not moving out. They were just hanging in there, like being rebellious about it. And that was a scary scene to see from the inside looking out there, and to know that you've got to stay in here to try to keep that line moving, to keep those kids moving on out. The thing that impressed me the most was that even though we had prayed for all the angels to be over that, we could have questioned whether God had answered our prayer. I know He did. There were angels over that entire dome. And then when these bad things happen, how did Satan get in there? Well, that's how Satan gets into our lives anyway. He comes in through little cracks here or there that he can get into. But all of that happened so that God could be glorified in the end.
Amen. Anybody else on the trip want to add anything?
When the scene that they described, I was in one of the vans with about I think it was supposed to seat, 7 or 8 folks, and we had about 16 in there. But because of besides the ones that were going to be baptized, there were several others that wanted to go witness the baptisms from over there. And so but all this chaos was going on, and I'm sitting on up the street just a little bit, waiting on Randy and some of the other van drivers to come through because I didn't know where we were going. And he kept not coming, and the scene was happening outside, and I go looking for him, and it's chaos inside. And at this point, I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't even feel good about what all was happening, the baptisms. I'm thinking, man, I just soon stay here and try to keep order. And so we went on, but as it unfolded over there at the beach, here's all these young folks going down into the water, and they were so free. I mean, they were just they were diving in the water, and even then, as it was happening, it took me a few minutes to realize, oh, man, this is similar to Acts. We're talking about 3,000 were saved on the day of Pentecost, and it was just joyous. They were just having an amazing time, and then as all of that was kind of finishing, and here comes the guy that we talked about, Brian Wooten. His name was George, by the way. Here they come up, and so it was just an amazing scene. Just to see all these baptisms taking place and the freedom that they were experiencing, because they were away from that chaos. And so anyway, that's.
I wanted to share about Javon. He was baptized last year. I wasn't there last year. He and his twin brother were baptized. And on Sunday afternoon when we first arrived, I had no idea where we were going. I didn't even know where Antigua was on the map. I felt like Abraham, it's just like, okay, here we are. Where are we going? Somebody show me what to do. So Gina said, hey, let's go out and knock on doors and just hand out flyers and tell people. So about 10 people volunteered, and I saw Javon. I had met him earlier. I said, come, go with us. And he and his twin brother came with us, and they'd go, and it was so fun. We'd walk through the streets, and he'd say, don't go up to their house. That's old people's house. They don't have any kids, And he said, yeah, go to this house. They have a lot of kids. This one came last year. Let's go to this house. He was just awesome. He and his twin brother were just awesome. And so one of my missions became, as I saw this, was Matthew 28, 18 through 20. Let's disciple him. Let's disciple him so he told me he wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer when he grew up. And he said he was, he's a really good athlete. I can just look. I didn't ever get to see him because he was in a different group than I was. I never did get to see him play soccer. But on the last day when I started studying the Bible with Dante and Raj were two of the guys I started studying the Bible. And Savante, yeah. I pulled him in, and he helped me study the Bible with these guys. Because I said, and then also Noah was coming in on this. And so, and Chuck was there with me, and we're saying, you guys got to take care of each other. You see how strong that temptation is out there. And then when we got to the baptisms, I had, I had him get in the water with me, and he helped me baptize these Dante and Taj and Savante, I think. So that was thrilling just to see that, he's not as strong as he should be. But living in that environment, who would be? I mean, that's almost like living in a garbage dump over there in some of these houses. I mean, it's unbelievable that some of the conditions. So, but he survived since last year. That was so encouraging to me. He stuck with it, and hopefully now he and Bernard and some of these can help some of these other kids survive and get strong and take the whole island for Christ. I'm praying that this church has about 50 people that come to church now. I'm praying by next year it'll be 100, and we'll begin to take the whole island for Christ.
Amen. When Dorian Flynn went to Antigua and established this congregation, whoever had trained him and taught him well. He baptized 7 or 8 teenage boys, started mentoring them. One of them, the church there. And when I went with Dorian in the 80s, one time in the 80s and one time in the 90s, and one of the elders at that church then was a diplomat to the United States. And they had the idea that they've got to get the young people off of the island and get some of the island out of them in order for them to be able to be a leader. And so Dorian had those guys going to Abilene and to Harding and different places. Well, those men are the elders now in this church. And their sons are in school. One of them is in school in China to be a civil engineer. One of them is in school in Venezuela, learning to be a farmer. One of them is in school in Jamaica, also being a civil engineer. And in about a month, you're going to get to meet another one of them. His name is Kenny Christian. And they're sending him to Heritage to be with us at Cross Point for the next 4 years. And when I see their specific intent, and they're all being trained, Kenny's got a computer degree. He's working for the passport. He's got a job when he comes back. They're training them all to come back and go to work. But they're training them to be workers in the kingdom. And so, how important is that? Well, Bernard, their preacher, will tell you that when he was 6 years old, he jumped the fence to come to Vacation Bible School when his family wouldn't come. He was converted, and he became a school teacher, and now he's the preacher. They've got a family that just placed membership at the Villa Church, and it was a husband and a wife and 3 children, and they said, "Why are you coming here?" And he said, "Well, when I was 8 years old, some Americans came down here and did a Vacation Bible School, and I remembered the Villa Church." And so we may not ever see what's going on, and I'm leading in this end of it to get to the very youngest that were in the crowd. I'll tell you, if you go down to as little, how many of you know who Ella Manchester is? You go down to as small as Ella Manchester, and she worked till she was worn out every day in that toddler group, dragging them around, chasing them down. And finally, they had to call some men to come and chase the ones down because they had two or three runners that they couldn't catch. And I mean, we're talking about, we're really, and one of them I chased, and 2 of them we had to actually send them home. They were so disruptive one of the days. Their names were Kanye and Jamari. And Ashley, why don't you tell a little bit about that group?
Well, Daddy was talking about spiritual warfare on the last day and how you could really tell that the devil was trying to discourage us. But I feel like with the little kids, it was a different kind of spiritual warfare because you can't just blatantly have little kids. You can't be like, oh, those kids are, the demons are working at them. But I do think that the devil was trying to discourage our group because most of the week we were yelling at them, telling them to get in line, making them sit down, passing out snacks, passing out coloring pages, running through a lesson, singing songs, trying to get them to just do stuff. And, you know, it really discourages you because you're thinking, I'm not being Jesus to these children. I'm yelling at them. I'm not being very nice. I'm spanking them. But what was just, you know, powerful was that even though, you know, on the last day I kept thinking, I'm just not making an impact. I have come down here to be Jesus to these kids, and I don't think they know that I love them and that Jesus loves them. But Daddy came into our group and some of the other SIA guys that were there to help us on the last day with those 2 boys that kept running away. And I'll let him tell what the little boy did. But I had another little boy that I would not get to be around him very much during the day because I was chasing down all the other kids. But at the end of the day, he always came and he wanted to sit in my lap and he wanted me to pick him up, and he would tell me that he loved me. And that was the reason that I was there, even though I didn't know it at the time, was to love on that little boy. or to love on all of them, even if I had to be stern. But you can tell the other story.
Jamari and Kanye, two that got kicked out on Tuesday, and that should have been kicked out every day. Somehow, the last night was going to be a singing night at the church. Boy, we sang for about 2.5 hours. I'm telling y'all, it was not anything like our church services. It went, we could have kept going too. But somehow, I looked up, and this older lady had one little kid in one hand, another little kid in another hand. And guess who it was? It was Kanye and Jamari. And somehow, they heard a van was coming through. Because Tyler and some of the Sias drove a van through a bunch of the neighbors. They heard a van was coming through, and Kanye and Jamari got their grandmother. They were cousins. We didn't know that. They got their grandmother to bring them to church that night. So, who knows what that'll mean in the future.
To me, one of the most impressive things was getting to see, if you ever wonder if it is important for these young people to go with their parents down there, don't ever question that. Watching them work with those children, I wouldn't have taken anything in the world for that. Seeing the young people work with the children, teaching them and loving them. And at night, when we would start singing, little children would be coming in all by themselves and crawling up in these young people's laps that had been teaching them during the day. Don't ever doubt the power that God can do through these young people that we've got here at Cross Point. They did an awesome job. And it was just, to me, the highlight of the entire thing was watching the little children come in night after night without a parent with them, just strolling in and crawling up in one of these kids' laps and sitting there the whole time just to be loved and listened and behaved. It was just amazing to me. And then I personally had a wonderful blessing that happened to me on this trip. And it was getting to know Jeff Thompson. That was a blessing that I wouldn't take anything for. I was not scared to go, but I did know that I could not fall, that I had to be careful. And it was like every time that I don't know how many times I looked up and he was watching over, and whenever somebody said, "I'll push her through the airport," Jeff said, "No, I'll take care of that." And I got to know him, and that was such a tremendous blessing for me that I had not dreamed I would. I knew that I'd be blessed by the Antiguans, but I didn't anticipate that. It was awesome.
Jeff, you want to respond to that? Or do you want to respond afterward, just come up here and hug her? That's what it'll do. That's what happens on these kind of trips, is you get to know people that you didn't know before. Anybody else want to share anything about your children? What they said when you got back, or what happened? Anybody that was a first timer want to say something about it?
I thought that it was for me. It was the first time for me to leave the country, and just to if nothing else, just the first time just to see the conditions that they actually live in on a daily basis was just unbelievable. I mean, we take for granted being able to turn on the water. I mean, over there we couldn't even take a drink of tap water because, I mean, if you walk around, there's water flowing just everywhere. The yards are just piled up with things, that yet you can tell that they're saving them because they're probably going to have to use that for food sometime down the road. They're going to have to barter with that piece of, what we would consider junk here. That's something they're going to have to barter with maybe to get their next meal over there. just seeing the way the enemy was at work. I mean, it was intense the entire trip. From one thing that we had been promising, and I was doing the construction work, which was good for me. Learned a lot, so that was a good thing for me to go do, and I appreciate y'all making that happen. But that being set aside, just the thing that we promised to the kids was that we would be able to give them a soccer ball. And we had the church had purchased the soccer balls to give these children. Well, lo and behold, the last day comes, and just to show you that the way very real the spirit world is, that was what a lot of these kids had hope for in their hearts, was a soccer ball. And like I think it was something like 50 or 60 soccer balls exploded in the vans on the way to the soccer fields. Now, you can take out of that what you want, but that's what happened. And so, we got to the soccer fields, but, we were all just kind of sitting there praying, and the Lord provided a way for us to give them something, whether it be flip-flops, some baseball cards, something like that. And I was one of the ones that was sitting there giving out the soccer balls, and I felt like it was like feeding the 5,000 going on, because I was like, I looked at the soccer balls, I was like, all right, there's only this many soccer balls here. Then I kept reaching in the bag. It's like I kept pulling out soccer ball after soccer ball after soccer ball. I was like, thank you, Jesus. And it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. But that kind of stuff's very real, folks. I know that, at least personally, I believe that way. So, just that just being one of the stories. Another story is a group of the young people were coming home in a van one night, coming home from, I can't remember from where it was, but we just dropped all the kids off. And they had this thing called Carnival, which is like a very, very evil festival. I guess I'll just leave it at that. It's a celebration of independence for them. It's Satan worship is involved, and they played the steel drums and what have you. So we were driving home from picking these kids up, and for whatever reason, Carl was driving, and we just stopped. We were wanting to listen to the music. Well, we stopped, and as soon as we get out of the van, we're walking up to the van. The music just stops, like, just like Christians are here. You know what I mean? And it was like, we pull up there, and then this guy comes out, just very unfriendly guy. You could tell he didn't want us to stay there very long. He had like these yellow-looking eyes, and I asked him, I was like, hey man, my name's Chase. What's your name? And he just looked at me like he wouldn't give me his name or tell me who he was or anything. And so I'm like, okay, well, so we stood there for a minute, and I felt, I could just feel the presence of evil there. It was intense. It was very intense, and. So we stayed there for a minute, and then we left. We left on and went on after that. But it was just stuff. They talk about. I was sitting there one time with the kids, which I only got to work with them one day. But on that last day, I was sitting under the tent with, and it was Gina was teaching her group of VBS kids, and those same two women that we talked about earlier. It's like they were just walking around, causing disturbance the whole time. When you want to talk about two people that's like, why are y'all here? What are you doing here? You're older, and you're just walking around, looking to cause disturbances. And she was teaching, and they would just come to the edge of the tent, and it would be like, when Brother Randy or anybody was up there talking, it'd be like two people just walking like right up there, just almost close to him, and just having a conversation. Just completely rude, completely, just completely being a distraction for what was trying to go on. And it was that kind of stuff all week long. Overall it was a great trip. You can see that the power that prevailed was good, because there were still baptisms. So.
What Chase didn't tell you is how he got on the trip, and he didn't tell you what he learned either. We had one person that backed out on the Monday before we were to leave on Friday. Well, no, it was Friday, so we had a weekend. And we were trying to get somebody to fill the slot. We already paid for the plane ticket, and Chase said he wanted to go. But Chase did not have a passport. And he went down to the courthouse, tried to get an appointment at the passport office in Atlanta. They were all booked up till mid-July. They got him an appointment on Tuesday at the passport office in New Orleans, or was it Wednesday? It was Wednesday, an appointment on Wednesday. So he drove down to New Orleans, went to his passport appointment, waited all day for all the background checks to go through, and Wednesday afternoon got his passport, drove back to Florence, and we left on Friday. But after the first, Chase worked with the guys, our men, a bunch of our men poured 7 large, formed and poured 7 large concrete columns for part of this construction that we're helping them do on their church building. And after the first day, I asked Chase, are you glad you came? Have you learned anything? And he said, yeah, I've learned that I don't want to do construction. Because I'm telling you, they worked hard. They mixed cement in a standstill mixer and dumped it on the ground and put it in 5-gallon buckets and carried it up the ladders to pour it down the columns. And so it was pretty hard work.
As soon as I got there on Monday morning, I thought that my job was going to be a prayer warrior, and I did, talk with a lady on Monday morning, and then Mark came over to bring water, and he said, Gaither, what you doing? And I said, well, I think I better go back with you, or maybe he said, you want to go back over to the soccer field? And I said, yes. And so I got back over there, and I don't remember who said to me, Gaither, you need to get with the 10 to 12-year-olds because the girls are acting up, and they need an authority figure over there. And so I got in that group, and there was a tall girl in there that was a troublemaker, and she was just disturbing the whole group, and the girls were just working hard to do the teaching and to do exactly what they were, and they were doing an awesome job, but she was just disturbing everything. And so I just kind of, somebody said, you love your enemies, but you stick closer to the enemies, so I just stuck to her like glue, And every time she looked like she was going to start up another thing, when she moved away from me, I just moved with her. And so finally I took her aside and talked to her. And I said, it's apparent to me that you are a leader. And you could be a great leader for the Lord. And I said, and I'm looking for that. And I'm expecting it. And so I just kept kind of sticking with her, but not as aggressively maybe as I was doing before. And on the last day, and she calmed down and settled in, and on the last day, I had taken a Bible that had been my mother's. I took several, but I'd taken one that had been my mother's, and I was going to give it to somebody special. So I told her, I said, I said, the last day I have something special that I want to give to you. So when in the midst of all this chaos that was going on out there, I went out because she got out before I saw her, and I had the Bible with me. And so some people said, no, Gaither, you don't need to go out. And I knew I needed to get out there and give her that Bible. So I went on out, and I said, I want to give you this Bible. This is a very special Bible to me because it was my mother's. And she said, I've already got a Bible this week. And I said, but this is a very special one for you. And she just held that Bible close to her. And it was worth all the sticking close and watching her to see that she grew during the week. That's how much they can change just in a few days. It's just amazing to me. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say that Kevin and Jenny did the same thing for me on the way back that Jeff did on the way there. As a matter of fact, when they were pushing me through the lines, one of the people, I don't know if it was in customs or where, said, you can bring your mother on up here. And I didn't hear that, but Jenny said Kevin just smiled and pushed me.
All I can say is may the Lord be praised, because it was a wonderful trip, and the success was all for the glory of God and all for the sake of the kingdom. And it worked right, and the results were right. Tyler?
I'm going to get up here so I can see everybody's faces. I guess it was Tuesday. Gina and some of the other kids had taken this little girl who's in a wheelchair. She's stuck in a wheelchair. They had taken her home the day before on Monday. Well, Tuesday after VBS, Gina comes to me and says, Tyler, I need some men to go with me, and protect us, be a bodyguard, basically. Well, we're walking along. I think Carl and Chase are with me. And they're at the beginning of the pack, and I'm at the end of the pack, just holding up the end of it. And I kind of get separated from the group. It's the end of the day. I'm not trying to run to this house. But Gina is in front of me, pushing this little girl. And I kind of get separated from them. And as we're approaching her house, which I did not know was her house, Gina is leaning in and slowing down, and I catch up to him. Well, by the time I had caught up to him, we had established that this run-down, unlivable house was hers. And so on top of her being in a wheelchair and living in this house that no one here would probably ever consider putting anything in that they value, Gina is talking to this girl. And as I'm walking up, she's singing, "I'm gonna view that holy city, oh, and, I knew that at that point in time, I was not there to be a bodyguard. I knew that at that point in time, God was there to soften a heart. And the comedy relief of this is, I'm sitting there trying to be this bodyguard, and I'm trying to hold back the tears. I got the face going on, sunglasses. And Gina has, rolled the girl to her parents, or, I don't know who she lived with, but Gina turns around, looks me right in the face and goes, "Are you okay?" And I just go, "Yeah." But that was just such an awesome moment because, you can call them missionaries, you can call them evangelists, you can call them whatever you want to call them. But this week, or the last week, we were farmers. We planted seeds left and right. We built relationships. And that's exactly what Christianity is. It is not a religion, it is a relationship. On top of that, planting seeds, day one, Mrs. Hall calls out this little boy, and I'm like, his name's Leroy, and I say, she took the megaphone from me, and she says, "Leroy is coming to church, and everybody should come with him." And I know, they'll make fun of you if they know you're a Christian or if you're going to church, that happens. Well, and I'm just sitting there, poor Leroy just got called out in front of all these kids, Well, Leroy shows up. That's right. And what I didn't know is Mrs. Hall had asked him if he had a Bible. Well, she said, "Okay, bring it. I want to see it." Make sure he had one. That's I guess this was all in the same night because I feel like Tuesday night I got dehydrated from crying, but. We get to church, we do the service. Mrs. Hall comes up to me and says, "Tyler, you remember that little Leroy boy?" I said, "Yeah, you called him out at VBS." She says, "Well, I asked him about bringing a Bible, told him to bring it. He brought it. I opened up the front cover, and it was from my mom and dad. And number one, Mom and Dad, thank you for everything. But y'all, it's all about planting seeds. You don't have to be in Antigua. You can be going to work. You can be on a bus ride. You can be on a train ride. You can be on a plane ride. You can talk to somebody that's riding back with you from Antigua. Ain't that right? Gaitha had a nice long conversation with a gentleman. I had the privilege of sitting next to Gaitha on the way back from Antigua. But y'all, it's all about planting seeds. God's going to water them. He's going to do everything it needs to. It's about planting seeds.
And so what our prayer is that some point in time we can round up some of them to come be with us for a week. And if that happens and Brother Dion gets to come, you'll get to hear Brother Dion lead you in this song that we're going to stand and sing as our dismissal tonight. But he can sing it better than anybody I've ever heard sing this song. Let's stand. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. You're my Jesus, precious Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Everybody, you are my strength. You are my strength when I am weak. You are the treasure that I seek. You are my all in all. Seeking you as a precious jewel. Lord, to give up I'd be a fool. You are my all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Jesus, Jesus, precious Lamb of God, worthy is your name. In unison. Taking my sin, my cross, my shame, rising again, I bless your name. You are my all in all. When I fall down, you pick me up. When I am dry, you fill my cup. You are my all in all. Jesus, you're the Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Worthy is Jesus, precious Lamb of God, worthy is your name. We're going to sing the chorus one last time. The last time the Villa Elders called me on the phone, and I know it's them because it always comes in as a Magic Jack number, okay? But the last time they called me, it was when all of the elders and all their wives were in a room together, and they sang this song to me on the phone. And they really believe this. And so let's sing this chorus through again, and we'll be dismissed. Jesus, precious Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Worthy is Jesus, Jesus, you're my Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Do it again. Sing again. Jesus, you're the Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Worthy is Jesus, Jesus, precious Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Worthy is your name. He's so worthy. Worthy is your name. You're dismissed. Thank you very much.